Today, we are going to learn about sex-linked traits. So a few things I want to remind you before we get started. We learned that humans have 44 autosomes and 2 sex chromosomes. So we can see that here in the karyotype. We have 22 pairs, so 44 total autosomes. So any chromosome that is not one of the sex chromosomes. And then 2 sex chromosomes, XX for female, XY for male, for a total of 46 total chromosomes. And so far, every trait we've talked about in our genetics unit, so freckles, blue skin, the different genetic disorders, hair color, eye color, all are associated with a gene that's located on one of these autosomes, so not linked to a sex chromosome. Like I said, we're going to talk about sex-linked traits today, and that means that the genes associated with these traits are located on a sex chromosome and not one of those autosomes. In particular, we're going to be looking at traits that are linked to the X chromosome. Okay, so the first human trait we're going to look at is color vision. And since we're talking about sex-linked traits, we now need to include the sex chromosomes when we're writing genotypes and think about what that means in terms of phenotypes. So the alleles we're going to be using are X for the X chromosome, big C for normal color vision. So normal color vision is the dominant allele. And then X little c. The little c is the recessive allele for color blindness. And then we also have to include the Y. Now remember, the gene for color vision is located on the X chromosome. So the Y chromosome does not have any, we're not giving it any letter because it does not have a gene for color vision on it. Okay, so when we're talking about genotypes, we're going to start with the X big C, X big C. And in terms of phenotype, we have to think about XX, that would lead to a female. And since I said that normal color vision is the dominant allele with the big C, this genotype would have the corresponding phenotype of a female who has normal color vision. We can also have X big C, X little c, so this female is heterozygous. We could also say she is a carrier because she does not have color blindness, since she does have that one big C and normal color vision is dominant, so it'll hide the appearance of that colorblind allele. But she could pass on this allele for color blindness to her children. So she's heterozygous. We would say that she is a carrier, since we're talking about a recessive trait. And of course, we could also have X little c, and that would lead to a female who does indeed have color blindness since she has both of the recessive alleles. For our males, we have less options here. There is X big CY, so XY for male. Since normal color vision is dominant, big C would mean that this male has normal color vision. And X little cy is the genotype that would lead to a male who is colorblind. So I just want you to notice that females would need to inherit 2 of the recessive alleles to be colorblind, and males, since we are talking about a sex-linked trait only on the X chromosome, would need to inherit just 1 allele. When we're looking at our Punnett square here, let's try this problem. So a colorblind man and a woman with normal color vision, but whose father is colorblind, we're going to answer some questions about the chances of them having a colorblind son and a colorblind daughter. So let's think about parents' genotypes at this point. We know that dad, the colorblind man, is colorblind. So if I look back over at my chart, the genotype that would lead to a colorblind male would be X little c. And again, guys, it's hard to make the superscripts on slides. So as long as you have the letter with the either being capital or lowercase, depending on what we're talking about, that's fine. Y would be dad's genotype. And then we have to figure out mom's genotype. So it says she has normal vision. But if we look here, there are 2 options of genotypes for a female with normal vision. She could be homozygous, so X big C, X big C. She could also be a carrier, right? She would still have normal vision, but she's heterozygous. So I gave you a little clue here in looking at, well, her father is colorblind. So her dad is colorblind. And if he's colorblind, he has to have this X little c Y. So think about which one of these sex chromosomes dad is always going to pass to his daughter, right? It takes two X's to make a female. We know that mom passes on one X because that's all mom has to pass on. And if dad passes on an X, that's what leads to the child being female, right? So dad has to pass on his X to his daughter. And since his only X has a recessive allele, that lowercase c, that must mean that that's what he passed to his daughter, right? Now she has normal vision, so she's going to be X big C. She must have gotten that from mom. But then since her dad was colorblind, he must have passed on to her X little c, making her a carrier, aka heterozygous. So you're going to fill in your Punnett square just like we always do. During meiosis, these alleles separate into the gametes. So I'm going to put that on top. You guys know it doesn't matter. So we got X little c from dad. And then the other option is 50% of his sperm cells are going to be passing on that Y, right? And then you got mom, X big C, and the other allele will be X little c because she is a carrier. So you're going to fill in your Punnett square like normal and then answer these questions here. When you're done that, I want you to read a little bit about hemophilia, another it's a genetic disorder that is sex-linked on the X chromosome. You're going to fill out your genotype-phenotype chart very much in the same way that we did for color blindness. And then you have a problem here to answer. Don't forget about your science ideas. On the next slide, quick video clip of looking at pedigrees, but when we're talking about a sex-linked trait, because we're going to be writing those a little bit differently. So make sure you take the 3.5 minutes to watch that video. Pause and rewind as needed. And then on the very last slide, you're going to be completing a pedigree tracing that genetic disorder of hemophilia through generations of a family. And your options for genotypes are at top here. Don't forget, you can always go back and refer to the chart that you made. Let me know if you have any questions.